Jamari McClinton's family had a plan in place for when he was released from prison, possibly by year's end. He would move to Durham, North Carolina, to be with his half-brother, the manager of a Dollar General, and hopefully avoid the influences that had kept him locked up for a third of his 21 years. McClinton was 14 when he was convicted as a juvenile of accessory to armed robbery. The incident stemmed from a house party in Jonesboro, approximately 17 miles from Atlanta, where another teen used a gun to take cell phones. While serving his sentence at the juvenile detention facility in Baldwin County, McClinton was charged with assaulting 2 correctional officers in separate incidents in 2016 and 2017. He pleaded guilty and received a sentence that sent him to the adult prison for a maximum of 6 years. According to family members, McClinton's survival in prison was based in large measure on his affiliation with the Bloods and payoffs to other gang members for food, personal products, and cell phone use. Members of his family would pay what his debts and what he owed by transferring funds to the Inmates' Cash App accounts. McClinton's life inside took a troubling turn when he had a falling out with the leader of the Bloods at Phillips State Prison located in Beaufort, Georgia. Michael Johnson, serving 15 years for a variety of offenses in Clayton County, including armed robbery, aggravated assault, and causing a riot in the county jail. The leader of one of the Blood sets in Phillips State Prison, Michael Johnson, accused McClinton of stealing 8 cell phones. Angry over the cell phone accusation and other matters, McClinton lashed out at Johnson, stabbing him in the back with a sharpened piece of metal, on April 19. The confrontation put Johnson in the hospital overnight. 3 days later, McClinton was placed in protective custody. Security around him was tight. However, that level of protection was no longer in place when McClinton was transferred to Baldwin State Prison 100 miles away from Phillips State Prison. At that time between 2020 and 2021 there were 57 homicides in Georgia prisons, with there being the total breaks down to 29 homicides in 2020 and 28 in 2021. With Baldwin State Prison having 6 homicides. On August 6 of 2021, the prison officials were aware that there would be a possible gang retaliation to McClinton. But instead he was assigned to a cell with Brandon Hill, who was a known Blood gang member who was at the time serving a sentence for robbery. At 7:35 on the morning of August 11, he was leaving the dining hall when he was stabbed in the heart on the sidewalk, with a makeshift knife. He was pronounced dead 20 minutes later. The day before his death, Jamari McClinton had requested the prison guards to place him in protective custody, but his request was denied. Brandon Hill was charged for Jamari's murder. Several hours later he was sent to Baldwin County Jail and was photographed. Later that night he was taken back to the prison and placed back into segregation. The 27-year-old from Augusta had only recently started a 3rd stint in the prison system for robbery and similar offenses and was eligible for release in upcoming October. McClinton's family members said he never mentioned Hill in his phone calls but he did say he was worried about his safety. On the day before he was killed, a Tuesday, he showed particular concern for what might happen the next day. His mother said, "He was worried about Wednesday. It was Wednesday this, Wednesday that, Mama. I just gotta get through Wednesday." Those were 21-year-old Jamari McClinton's last words to his family members the day before his death. His family members believe the prison guards were the ones responsible for his death, posting on Facebook after McClinton's death. His sister, Mira McClinton Reed, wrote that her brother told her the day before he died that he had asked a guard to place him in protective custody and was told to return to the dorm instead. Responding to Reed's post, a guard at the prison, Charlene Curry, wrote, "He sure did," and was sent back by a lieutenant to H building. Officer Curry was later asked to be interviewed regarding the incident but declined the request. On January 9, 2021, 43-year-old inmate Terry Lee Bennett, who was serving time at Augusta State Medical Prison for armed robbery and parole violations, was found in his prison cell on the floor lifeless and bloody. Earlier that day, Bennett's cellmate 26-year-old Deontay Halsey, better known by his nickname as Homicide, was serving time for credit card fraud. Was given an offer by another inmate that he would give him methamphetamine if he would attack his cellmate Terry Lee Bennett. Terry had told his daughter multiple times that he was afraid of his cellmate. He had previously asked to be switched to another cell, but he was eventually sent back to the same cell as Deontay Halsey. Yet, an argument reportedly started between Bennett and Halsey around 6 p.m. and ended a little after 9 p.m. Halsey started choking Terry until he was unconscious. Bennett was then beaten with a dinner tray over and over. Halsey was eventually indicted a year later, but during that time he was granted a bond of $150,000. The Florida Department of Corrections is well known for their violence inside of their adult prisons, with there being 2,657 deaths in the Florida Department of Corrections in the years between 2017 and 2023. But this number includes deaths that vary from natural causes, homicides, suicides, and accidental, some deaths that are still undetermined what happened to the victims. But we have a crazy and sad story coming out of the Columbia Correctional Institution. An all-male prison in Lake City, Florida, opened in 1992. Some 1,400 inmates serve their time at the facility known for their very violent offenders. In 2012, a correctional officer was stabbed to death. Same story 4 years later in 2016 when an officer was stabbed to death by an inmate. Around the same time a schizophrenic inmate was found dead in his cell. In 2016, a Florida State Representative David Robinson visited the prison, citing that it was unfit for human habitation. On Thursday morning of September 13, 2018, cellmates 58-year-old Larry Mark and 31-year-old Michael Hernandez had got in a heated argument. Hernandez allegedly became agitated at Mark because he would not stop pestering him. Hernandez attacked Mark in the cell. Hernandez strangled Mark. He then removed his eyes, placed them in a cup and showed them to other inmates, saying that he would consume them as a snack later. He then mutilated the man's body, rolled him inside a sheet, cut off his ear and placed his ear on a string that he wore around his neck to the chow hall for breakfast the following morning. At the time Larry Mark was serving life in prison for the 1981 murder of a taxi cab driver. Michael Hernandez was in prison for murdering a 67-year-old woman during a 2004 home invasion, a crime earning him a death sentence. While awaiting trial, Hernandez was indicted on charges he threatened to kill then-President George W. Bush. In May 2017, Hernandez was resentenced to life in prison. Hernandez had recently been transferred to Columbia from Florida State Prison, where he was on death row. During trial, Hernandez's lawyer argued that he had a traumatic childhood because he watched his father overdose on drugs in front of him in 1990. In 1998, his mother murdered her abusive husband, sending her to prison. As a child, the couple regularly beat Hernandez, something psychologists say caused permanent brain damage. They also used drugs with Hernandez before he turned 12 years old.
These niggas still stealing in this bitch. Motherfucking straight junkies, you know what I'm talking about? This shit here just like the street, we just locked in, we can't move around, baby. 500 East Fairfield shit, East Pakistan, my nigga. Straight up, it's going down. The Money Mansion. You see that Aries nigga up there, man, straight from out the cola, babe. This shit crazy.